Welcome to Many Magical Tales, short stories for kids by Christopher Durr. Thank you for joining us on another adventure.
This story is not meant for children under 5. It is scary and meant for kids a little older. We have new Halloween stories meant for the littles coming soon. You ever get that feeling? The one where something's wrong but you just can't put your finger on it? That slow, creeping tingle at the base of your neck like a spider's crawling up your spine? Yeah, that feeling. I've had it for years. There's this tree in our backyard, see? I know, a tree's just a tree, right? But not this one. It's older than the others, bigger too, its branches stretching out like bony fingers clawing at the sky. It's so twisted and gnarled that I swear it's got a face in the bark, 2 dark knots for eyes and a wide, crooked mouth. I named it Abee Yoyo when I was 5, after an old story Dad used to tell me. A creepy tale about a giant monster that eats kids who don't behave. At the time, it was just a name. But lately, I've been starting to wonder. I live in a town where Halloween's a big deal. The whole town dresses up, every house decorated with ghosts, goblins, and grinning pumpkins. Our place is no different. Mom's got a box of fake cobwebs, plastic skeletons, and these giant rubber bats she hangs from the porch. But the real centerpiece of our Halloween display? It's Abee Yoyo. We drape orange lights in his branches, hang paper ghosts from the limbs, and stick a big old witch's hat on his top. Folks in town think it's great. They take pictures next to him every year. But here's the thing, they don't know what I know. See, I've been watching Abee Yoyo for a while now. I started noticing weird things when I was about 9. The branches? They don't always stay where they're supposed to. Some mornings I'd come out and they'd be hanging way lower than the night before, almost brushing the ground. Other times, the ground beneath the tree would be disturbed, like something had crawled out of it. Once, I found footprints, deep ones, too big to be from any dog or deer. But I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Oh, hey, Mom, Dad, by the way, the tree in the backyard's alive and I think it's eating kids at night. Yeah, right. They'd laugh me straight out of the house. Then came Halloween night last year. I'd been watching Abee Yoyo extra close all October. Something about him felt different this year, more alive, if that makes sense. The air around him felt thick, like walking through soup. And there was this smell, faint but sour, like rotting leaves mixed with something else, something worse. That night, I put on my costume, classic skeleton, nothing fancy, and went out trick-or-treating with my best friend Stella. We were hitting every house in town, bags bulging with candy, laughing and running down the sidewalks. But the whole time, my mind was back home on Abee Yoyo. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see those twisted branches reaching out across the sky, trying to catch me. Come on, Stella called, dragging me along to the next house. You're acting like you've seen a ghost. I forced a laugh. Yeah, I guess so. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was wrong. So after we hit the last house on our route, I told Stella I had to go home. Said I wasn't feeling well. She shrugged and waved me off, already tearing into her candy. I cut through the back streets, heading straight for home. As I rounded the corner to our yard, the hair on my arm stood straight up. There was Abee Yoyo looming in the moonlight. His branches swayed in the breeze, but there wasn't any wind. The paper ghosts fluttered in the orange lights, and that sour smell hit me again, stronger this time, so strong I gagged. Then I saw it. The branches were moving, not swaying like in the wind, but reaching. They stretched down, low to the ground, curling like fingers, and that's when I realized there was something beneath them, something alive. I crouched behind the bushes, heart pounding in my ears. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but no, the branches of Abee Yoyo were wrapping around a kid, a boy about my age, dressed like a pirate. He was struggling, his hands clawing at the ground, trying to get away, but the branches pulled him in closer, dragging him toward the trunk. I watched, frozen, as the bark on Abee Yoyo's face began to shift. The knotty eyes blinked open, glowing a sickly green in the dark, and the mouth, split open with a sound like cracking wood. It wasn't a hole, though. It was filled with teeth, long, sharp teeth made of wood and bark. The kid screamed, but no one could hear him. The mouth opened wider, and the branches shoved the boy inside, like feeding a snake. I watched, my legs too weak to run, as the tree's bark smoothed over, swallowing the boy whole. The branches pulled back into place, swaying lazily again, and Abee Yoyo just stood there, like nothing had happened. My mind raced. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, my breaths coming out in shaky gasps. What did I just see? Who would believe me? Then, in the stillness, the tree's eyes, those glowing green knots, shifted. Slowly, they turned toward me. It saw me. I bolted, running faster than I ever had, my bag of candy forgotten. My lungs burned, my feet stumbling over the uneven ground. But I didn't stop. Not until I was inside the house, the door locked behind me. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the backyard from my bedroom window, waiting for Abee Yoyo to come for me. But he didn't. Not that night. The next morning, my parents stood by the kitchen window, staring out at the empty patch of dirt where Abee Yoyo had been. I could tell they were rattled. Mom kept shaking her head, muttering under her breath. Dad had this tight, pale look on his face, like he'd seen a ghost. "That tree's been there for years," Mom whispered, gripping the edge of the counter. "How could it just disappear?" The police arrived. Soon as they came in, I told them everything. They seemed skeptical, exchanging looks as they followed us out to the backyard. When we showed them where the tree had stood, their eyebrows raised. "It's always been there," Dad insisted, pointing to the disturbed earth. "Right here. We decorated it every Halloween. How could a tree just vanish overnight?" One of the officers, a guy with a thick mustache and heavy-set eyes, crouched down and poked at the ground with his gloved hand. The dirt was loose, freshly churned, as if something huge had been yanked out by the roots. "Huh," he muttered. "That's odd." His partner, a younger cop with a dismissive smirk, shook his head. "Trees don't just walk away." My parents stood there, hands on their hips, looking helpless. "We're not crazy," Dad said. "That tree was here yesterday." The mustached officer stood up, dusting his hands off. He looked confused, but not convinced. "No kids were reported missing last night," he said, glancing at me. "Are you sure about what you saw, kid?" I nodded, my throat tight. "I'm telling you, it ate a boy. The branches wrapped around him, and then it just swallowed him whole." Mom gasped. She hadn't heard the details before now. Her face paled, and she grabbed Dad's arm for support. The officers exchanged another glance. "Look," the young cop said, holding up a hand. "We didn't get any reports of missing kids last night. And as far as I can see, all that's here is a patch of dirt. You're sure this isn't just some Halloween prank gone wrong?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Does this look like a prank to you?" The mustached cop sighed, clearly trying to placate us. "We'll file a report. If any kids go missing or someone reports seeing something, we'll let you know. But I'd suggest keeping an eye on your kid. Sometimes, the imagination can get the better of kids around Halloween." That's when I lost it. "It wasn't my imagination," I shouted. "I saw it. The tree was alive, and it took that kid. I'm not crazy." The younger cop rolled his eyes, but the older one, the mustached guy, just gave me a long, hard look. "We'll keep you posted, kid," he said quietly before heading back to the car. As they drove away, I watched them disappear down the street, a heavy knot of frustration building in my chest. They didn't believe me. No one did. Mom and Dad stood there in silence, staring at the empty spot where Abee Yoyo had been. I knew they wanted to believe me, but how could they? How could anyone? That night, things felt off. We all sat down for dinner, but the tension hung over the table like a storm cloud. No one said a word about the tree or the cops. We ate in silence, the only sound the clinking of forks against plates. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. About the boy. Where had he come from? Who was he? Why hadn't anyone reported him missing? The whole thing was driving me nuts. As time passed, I realized there wasn't much I could do, and it didn't appear as though the tree would be returning. So after a while, life resumed as normal. well, as normal as possible. Halloween came and went the following year. Mom decorated the house as usual, but she seemed more subdued about it, like she didn't want to admit how uneasy she felt. No one mentioned the tree again, not even once. It was like we'd all made some silent pact to pretend it never happened. But I couldn't forget, not when I knew the truth. Then, just like last year, Halloween night came. I was sitting in my room staring out the window watching kids in their costumes roam the neighborhood. From time to time, I'd see flashes of laughter, hear the muffled sounds of trick-or-treaters giggling as they ran from house to house, bags heavy with candy. But my eyes kept drifting to the spot in the yard, the empty space where Abee Yoyo used to be, and that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a shadow, a trick of the moonlight maybe, but as I squinted, leaning closer to the window, my heart started hammering in my chest. There it was, creeping at the edge of the neighborhood. The tree. It was back. But this time, it didn't stand tall and menacing like before. No, it slunk low to the ground, branches dragging along the earth like claws. It moved silently, slipping between the houses, staying just outside the glow of the streetlights. My breath caught in my throat. It was hunting. I watched as it paused at the edge of a yard, its branches twitching, reaching out toward a group of kids laughing on the sidewalk. The twisted branches curled inward like a predator about to pounce. And then, it vanished. Just like that, it was gone, slipping into the shadows. I pulled back from the window, my heart racing, sweat beading on my forehead. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that my mind was playing tricks on me, but deep down, I knew better. I knew what I saw. It was real. And it wasn't finished. I ran down the hall and told my parents. My dad came to my room and looked out my window. He saw nothing. He told me I was safe, the house was locked, and nothing could get inside. Eventually, I fell asleep, while hiding under my blankets and holding on to a baseball bat. Around 3 a.m, I was suddenly startled out of my sleep as I heard a tap, tap, tap at my window. You have been listening to Abee Yoyo, presented by Many Magical Tales. Happy Halloween!